on Tobago's economy. Both representatives have since attended meetings in order to ensure that there is the required cohesion. As the Secretary of Health, Wellness and Family Development, I have had the privilege of leading the COVID-19 task force, which comprises representatives from many divisions of the Tobago House of Assembly. The team has been working assiduously with the aim of ensuring that we reduce all the possibilities which will cause the virus to thrive and to grow. And I wish to take this opportunity to thank the team for their relentless efforts so far, and all the nurses and the personnel for their work to date. And so with this objective in mind, we have undertaken the following measures to date. We have held ongoing meetings with internal stakeholders to develop and implement a coordinated response to COVID-19, and we now have our COVID plan of action. We have held ongoing meetings with stakeholders, including but not limited to TRHA, the port, airport, police, and of course with TEMA, to inform and educate persons on the treatment and management of the virus, and to share the management plan for any COVID-19 case that may emanate on this island. More specifically, we have held training for several stakeholders. We have initiated protocols and procedures at ports of entries for isolation and management of such cases. We have commenced thermal screening of passengers on international flights to Tobago. We have been informing and regularly updating the public through media briefings, press releases, media interviews, social media posts, etc. And we have been educating the public on preventative measures through media releases and social posts, and of course, keeping our population very aware as to the implications of not following the rules and regulations as would have articulated in times before. And from the level of the Division of Tourism and Transportation, they would have taken the initiative through the Chief Secretary to cancel a number of different activities. There has been some panic and some concern in the public domain as it relates to flights emanating from international jurisdiction. In Tobago, we have direct flights emanating from Europe and one from the United States of America. Although our borders are now closed, we have nationals returning who will require isolation for 14 days. I wish to inform the public that we have since secured a facility where those persons will be quarantined. And yesterday evening rather, we had the first of such flight coming into Tobago, and those persons, the nationals of Trinidad and Tobago, are now in our quarantine facility. We have also determined that we are to cater to two categories of persons: those who are positive and well, and those who are positive and ill. If a person is positive and well, that individual will be taken into one of our rehabilitation and empowerment centers. And so together with that rehabilitation center, the TEMA isolation facility, and the geriatric ward, we now have 32 spaces on hand for treating with COVID persons who are positive but well. With respect to the positive and ill cases, if the person is positive and ill, that individual will also be taken into isolation at the Scarborough General Hospital and will be stabilized for 24 to 48 hours. And like everything else, we have facilities in Tobago, but if it is necessary, that person will be transported to Trinidad where they can seek further care. At this current time, the hospital, as we have it, can isolate 11 patients at any one time. And if persons require intensive care, there is an identified area at the hospital to stabilize those patients. I wish to emphasize to the public that all protocols are in place. We have had a system that has been tried and tested before, and we are ready to treat with any suspected case of COVID-19. We have tested self-isolation at home, we have tested isolation and quarantine at the hospital, and we have also tested quarantine at places that we have leased. The staff have their PP in every cases that will be utilized in treating with suspected cases and also positive cases where it becomes due. Samples have been taken from suspected cases, and as I indicated before, we are very ready. Our hotline will be established by the end of this week. This hotline will be manned by senior doctors. Persons experiencing flu-like symptoms can call the hotline, and they will be triaged by the doctor on the phone, who will then advise as to the next course of action. In the interim, if persons are experiencing flu-like symptoms, we encourage them to call the health centers or the hospital, where they will be put on to an appropriate person to assist. I wish to communicate to all that the Chief Secretary and I have determined that a committee will be established to examine the effects of COVID-19 on our Tobago economy. And so to this end, the committee will comprise representatives or representative on the National Committee, which is Mr. Joel Jack, Finance and the Economy Secretary, who will chair those deliberations, a representative from the Division of Tourism and Culture, one from the business community, and the other from the Division of Community Development and Labor. I will now hand you over to Assemblyman Joel Jack, Secretary of Finance and the Economy.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much, Councillor Tracy Davidson-Celestine, and good morning to members of the media. It's my pleasure to be here to report to you, even in these trying circumstances. You may recall that it was on Monday the Prime Minister announced a number of cabinet-appointed subcommittees to treat with and as a direct response to the COVID-19 pandemic. I was appointed as the representative of the Tobago House of Assembly to treat with the concerns of the Assembly, primarily as it relates to finance and the economy. After careful deliberation on the Monday afternoon and during the day on Tuesday, and on Tuesday evening, and following a special cabinet meeting that was held yesterday, several initiatives were outlined, and a stimulus package was announced to treat with this crisis. And I wish to commend the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance for their immediate response, because you can recall in the 2008-2009 global financial crisis, because the response was not
Welcome to this morning's Playway Pick 2 and Pick 4 draw, supervised by independent auditors KPMG and presided over by the National Lotteries Control Board. Good luck, everyone.
Good morning. It's Thursday, 19th March 2020. Welcome to the drawing of the Playway Pick 2 and Pick 4 numbers. First we'll draw today is a Playway number. And the winning number is 36, the Lucky Mark Donkey. That number again, 36, the Lucky Mark Donkey. It's time to create your own Mega Mix where you can continue to win more. Our Mega Mix machine is loaded with 2 white balls and a Mega Ball, 3 white balls and the Mega Ultra Ball, and 4 white balls and the Mega Extreme Ball. If a white ball calls, you win the base amount of $26 for every $1 played on the winning mark. If the Mega Ball calls, you win an additional $85 for every $1 played. If the Mega Ultra Ball calls, you win an additional $110 for every $1 played. And if the Mega Extreme Ball calls, you can win even more, an additional $130 for every $1 played. You can play 1, 2 or all 3 Mega Mix options for only $1. The Mega Ball has called. The Mega Ultra Ball has called. Players, playway number 36, the Lucky Mark Donkey, has called with the Mega Ball and the Mega Ultra Ball. Congratulations to our Mega Mix winners. You've won the base payout and your additional Mega Mix winnings. Remember, you can play 1, 2 or all 3 Mega Mix options for only $1. And now we'll draw this morning's Pick 2 numbers. And the first Pick 2 number is 12, but that number again is 12. Now for a second Pick 2 number. And the second Pick 2 number is 33. That number again is 33. This morning's winning Pick 2 numbers are 12 and 33 in that order. And now for Pick 2 Mega Draw. This morning our machine is loaded with the Mega Ball and 2 white balls. Remember, if the white ball calls, there'll be no extra payout. However, when the Pick 2 Mega Ball calls, if players paid an extra $5 minimum on the Mega Ball, not only will they win the base payout, but the additional Mega Ball payout. And the Mega Ball has called. Congratulations, you're a Pick 2 Mega winner. Not only have you won your base payout, but an additional Mega payout. And now let's show the winning numbers for this morning's Pick 4 draw. The first Pick 4 number is 2. That number again is 2. The second Pick 4 number is 5. That number again is 5. The third Pick 4 number is 6. That number again is 6. And the fourth and final Pick 4 number is 6. That number again is 6. I repeat, this morning's winning Pick 4 numbers are 2, 5, 6 and 6 in that order. Congratulations to all our Playway, Pick 2 and Pick 4 winners. And now for some online news. Wednesday's winning Lotto Plus numbers was purchased at S&L Minimart around West Main Road, San Juan. And Saturday's jackpot is now a minimum guaranteed $2 million. 4 lucky players who chose yesterday's 5 winning cashpot numbers each won $48,525. Congratulations to all you cashpot winners. Players try our new scratch game Double Win. Win horizontally, vertically or diagonally with 26 chances per ticket. Tickets cost $30. Yes, only $30. Scratch, match and win. Play today. Thanks for viewing. Join us again at 1 p.m. for another Playway, Pick 2 and Pick 4 draw.
They have a new game shaking up TNT. Play MoneyGram, winning real easy. We talking big money, get a game on. Easy to win, non-stop action. Choose 1, 2, 3 numbers up to 50. Win every 3 minutes, this is the real thing. You could bet big, you could bet small. Win the MoneyGram with one random ball. With better odds, you can win between $5 and $2,225 every 3 minutes with NLCB's newest game, MoneyGram. Players must be 18 years or older. Play responsibly.
And let me say, at the meeting with the Bankers Association and the ministry, at the ministry on Tuesday, they were heartened and they were ready to partner with the ministry, the Minister of Finance, and the Central Bank Governor as we came up with a workable solution to treat the COVID-19 economic impact head-on. Additionally, interest rates on credit cards will be reduced by amounts ranging from 10% to 17% on existing rates. For example, and what this means for those persons who are holders of First Citizens Bank credit cards, for example, they have agreed to reduce the credit card interest rate from 24% to 20%. Additionally, Republic Bank will reduce their interest rates from 24% to 20%, and we anticipate that the other banks will follow suit, will follow in similar manner. Let me also highlight the fact that the two major chambers in Trinidad, the Trinidad and Tobago Manufacturers Association and the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Commerce, they came out in full support of the measures coming from the minister, and they also have agreed to encourage their members to keep their employees on the jobs for the next 4 weeks. In the Tobago context, I will be meeting with the Chamber of Commerce and the tourism stakeholders as we seek to ensure, first and foremost, job preservation and business continuity, even in the midst and following the COVID pandemic. So the chambers in Trinidad, they have agreed to keep their members on the jobs for over the next 4 weeks. Given that we are totally unaware as to how long we'll be faced with the pandemic. We have several estimates, May, some persons say October, August, but I will leave that for the medical professionals to highlight. Another important point that was highlighted, and I know some of the persons in the business community here in Tobago, they were also requesting the payment of outstanding VAT refunds, and this is something that the government will be implementing in short order. In the Tobago context, we will take that decision as part of our strategy to treat with the outstanding commitments and payables to suppliers and contractors. Our initiatives over the last financial year, they were successful in minimizing the rollover in commitments from the previous financial year, and that is something that we will be treating with moving forward over the next 30 to 60 days. Additionally, the government announced a liquidity support program, and in addition to what the banks will be doing, we have agreed to engage the credit union in a liquidity support program through the credit union movement for their members. And the objective of this program would be to provide financial support to individuals and those small businesses who are members of the credit unions. And I think it's an important initiative, and in particular for the credit unions in Tobago, given the fact that credit unions play a very important role in the Tobago economy. Outside of government services and government expenditure, which contributes approximately 46% to GDP, coming in second is the financial services sector, with approximately 24-25%, and a major component in that sector is the credit union movement. And I'll be meeting with members of the credit unions on Monday, the Tobago chapter, as we formulate a plan as to how they can participate in this liquidity support loan program for the benefit of their members. The 12 indigenous credit unions, they manage in excess of $500 million TT dollars in assets. And we want to ensure that the credit union sector remains resilient coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic. Another important point and another issue highlighted by the Tobago business persons is the need for foreign exchange. And the government has taken the decision to inject additional foreign exchange into the market through the Exim Bank. And you know that initiative by the government in providing additional forex to manufacturers through the Exim Bank, that has worked successfully, and additional foreign exchange will be injected into the market via the Exim Bank and commercial banks to ensure that suppliers, that they are able to settle the outstanding bills, but more importantly, to ensure that they are able to acquire the necessary goods and pharmaceuticals and medical supplies as we treat with the issue of COVID-19. And in the Tobago context, I urge the Minister of Finance to ensure that the business persons in Tobago, that they can receive their fair share and adequate supply of foreign exchange in Tobago to allow them to purchase these vital goods and supplies from abroad as well. As it relates directly to the hoteliers, the Prime Minister and as well the Minister of Finance, and we agreed to a special grant facility to hoteliers, given the fact that at my last count on the weekend and on Monday, occupancy levels at various hotels hovered around 10% and continued to decline. What the hoteliers, the feedback that they gave is that they were nervous answering the telephone because every call coming in was a call for cancellation. And the situation is serious in the sector. And while we work in the first instance to assist them to refurbish, to repair and enhance their room stock, which will be essential coming out of the crisis, because we anticipate once we are over the critical period in this health crisis that we'll have increased tourist arrivals, we will have domestic airlift will return, and then we will have a restart of the cruise season. So, as I mentioned before, I'll be meeting with the stakeholders in the tourism industry, and we will ensure that we put in the necessary measures and that their suggestions will form the basis of a comprehensive report formulated by the Tobago House of Assembly with the inputs of the relevant stakeholders from the Chamber, the tourism sector, and the wider Tobago business community as we work together to formulate the necessary policies to mitigate against the COVID-19 virus. I would also like to highlight that Unicoma and Island Finance and some of the other money lenders and hire purchase organizations have also indicated that they are willing to work with their customers, and they would also follow suit in similar fashion to the banks, and they would deal with their customers on a one-on-one basis. Coming out of the Division of Finance and the Economy, some of the departments, they are working around the clock, and we are looking at we are conducting economic research, looking at the economic impact on COVID on Tobago. The Consumer Affairs Department, they are monitoring the prices across Tobago, and they are receiving complaints in some instances of price gouging and sudden increase in prices some critical cleaning agents and pharmaceuticals. So they have been mandated to monitor the prices across the island, and just coming out of a meeting early on, I'm receiving some complaints, and they are monitoring it. And I like the practice adopted by some persons on social media, in that they are comparing old bills with current bills, and I've asked that a database be compiled in terms of those persons who are using this opportunity in terms of the price gouging, and we will take the necessary action. As it relates to the Strategic Business Support Unit, they are at this time reviewing and liaising with our clients to get a first-hand feel of the impact of COVID on their business. Because while the tourism sector was directly impacted, we also have to remember the ancillary services, the tour operators, the restaurants, the bars, tour guides, scuba dive shops, and so on. So we have sent out a request, and we're getting the feedback, and the feedback is coming in, and we are compiling all their responses, and we'll be taking the necessary measures. Because some of the things that we are responsible for in Tobago, for example, our business development, our BDU clients, and our enterprise assistance loan clients, that program is managed by the Tobago House of Assembly, and in similar fashion to the banks, we can implement a system of deferral for one loan payment or two loan payments as the need arises. In addition, the Emergency Medical Alert Program, they are also seeking to expand the support coming out of that department. Additionally, Customs, the Customs Department is open. What we are trying to do is to facilitate or to expedite the clearance of containers and goods, especially that was an initiative and a request by the Chamber and the Trinidad Chamber as well, and the Minister she has agreed, and they're working to ensure that the processing of containers, that is expedited, so that distributors and supermarket owners, that they can restock their shelves. Additionally, the Inland Revenue Department is open. We are trying to observe the social distancing and trying to reduce the number of persons congregating at the Inland Revenue Department. So we're trying to reduce the numbers and manage the number of persons there. But overall, in the Division of Finance, we continue to monitor what is happening. But additionally, at the Assembly level, we will be recalibrating our fiscal priorities, and we are currently looking at various scenarios, and we engage in scenario planning and forecasting in terms of minimizing the disruption on the Tobago economy and on the lives of all citizens resident in Tobago. We are also looking at reviewing the deferral of rental fees for tenants at the Esplanade and possibly at Cove. We're also looking to ramp up the enterprise assistance grant and loan programs to provide the support to entrepreneurs at this time. As it relates to our social safety net support, that will be important during this time, where a number of persons at this time might be terminated from their jobs, although we are asking the Chamber and the wider business community to, given the provisions put in place, for them to preserve employment within the next 30 days or so in the first instance. We also, asking persons to, where possible, adopt a work from home or rostering policy where applicable. And we have implemented a system in the division of finance where we are looking to see as best as possible how we could limit the persons coming to the office. So we have met over the past week and this morning again, and we are ramping up our investment in technology and to ensure that persons within the division remain safe. But as I conclude this morning, let me again thank the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance for their timely response and intervention, and for a fairly comprehensive fiscal and monetary package to ensure that the Trinidad and Tobago economy remains buoyant and resilient in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. As a Tobago representative on the Finance Committee and as the chair of the committee appointed by the Chief Secretary, we are willing to work with all stakeholders to ensure that we surmount this crisis and that we remain resilient and that the Tobago economy remains resilient. And as I have said over the past week, let us not waste a good crisis, and let us ensure that at the end, our tourism sector rebounds and the Tobago economy rebounds after this. I thank you this morning.
All right, so as we continue with this media briefing, we're looking at the different sectors. So at this time, I will invite Mr. Lewis from the Tobago Tourism Agency to give us a little update on the tourism sector.
Yeah, thank you, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As you know, this crisis has really impacted on the world, and recognizing the position of tourism within the context of Tobago, the board of directors of the Tobago Tourism Agency and the management team, we've had a series of meetings during the last week and a half, between the 9th and the 13th. What we have done is strategized as to how are we going to get out of this crisis and what do we do. You would have heard the Deputy Chief Secretary mention a number of initiatives that are ongoing, and he also focused on the fact that we have to place our emphasis on surviving the crisis and how do we emerge from it. And we've had a number of activities. In the first instance, we dealt with the present. The present is how do we get the existing visitors on island to leave. Leave meaning that they are no longer our responsibility, and that is the best way in which you deal with a crisis when you have a migrant population. We've been working very actively with the airline partners, with the Airports Authority, with the Civil Aviation Authority, as well as the Office of the Chief Secretary, in ensuring that we can get the passengers out. And we've been communicating in two directions. One is that we've been working very closely with the partners, advising them and informing them of what the flight schedules are, so they in turn would be communicating with their guests as to what's happening in Tobago to allow and facilitate a smooth transition. The second part of it is that the eyes of the world from a tourism perspective are on us, and a very important feature of our survival and growth coming out of this crisis is how have we managed it. So we are communicating every day with our partners internally, and at the same time, we are communicating what steps are being taken, both from a tourism perspective and the initiatives that are being pursued by the health sector in terms of how we manage the containment, the mitigation, and the transition of that crisis. Our survivability beyond its occurrence would depend critically on how we have managed that whole process, and we're paying a lot of emphasis on that as we go forward. The other issue is that we have started to give serious and significant reflections on what is required for us to grow coming out of this crisis. We have accepted and understood that this virus is going to recalibrate tourism and the world. What we would have seen happen coming out of the world economic crisis in 2008, 2009, as well as the events that followed from September 11th, 2001, this crisis is going to have a more significant impact on people's willingness and also ability to travel. And that is something that we have to be mindful of. But then the transition would not be a quick fix. We have to be promoting Tobago, where we'll be addressing what the new market demands will look like. What are the emerging opportunities that we can fit ourselves into? How do we create the demand for Tobago as that ideal destination? And we will have to implement some strategies that are very different to what we have done in the past. For instance, we have accepted that during the shadow of this crisis, we have to address issues that are related to our competitiveness. And we are very heartened by the fact that the Prime Minister and also the Deputy Chief Secretary has mentioned that there is a reconsideration of the tourism accommodation upgrade program. We have gotten to a point where in 2018 we had 5 or 6 properties engaged. Last year we had 22 that are engaged in the process. Now it becomes even more relevant, and we have to look at the dynamics to see how we can get more properties to upgrade their products. But also, the question for us is, what will be people looking for in a tourism vacation coming out of this crisis? They will be looking for activities that are safe, secure, and they want the assurance that they will not have any negative impacts of them taking a vacation. So that is why the transition and our management of this whole crisis is very important, and we are communicating every day to our stakeholders, both internal and external. We've also recognized that the willingness and the ability to connect with Tobago will be very important. So we would have to work with our airline partners in ways that we have not done in the past. When I say ways that we have not done in the past, I'm specifically speaking to removing the uncertainty, because Tobago is not always the easiest place to get to. So we have to resolve the issue of creating easy access in and out of Tobago, and that is something that we have to be working very closely for our airline partners. The other issue is that we would have to focus very clearly on those activities that will allow us to move quickly, and some of those activities that are resilient to issues like we are facing now. So we have spent a good bit of time, and we are spending a good bit of time on addressing those issues. And a lot of the success of our strategy will depend on how do we enhance our competitiveness while we are dealing with the current issues. And that is the strategy that we'll be employing going forward. So we will be communicating. We are continuously working on addressing issues of competitiveness, and there is definitely going to have to be a new brand and a new type of collaboration between the promoting agencies and also the owners of the product in Tobago. So this is a snapshot of what we are engaged in, and we are continuing to manage the process and manage the information as it relates to Tobago and tourism. Thank you.
So as I would have indicated before, all sectors are affected, and even from the pronouncements yesterday and even further back, education has been impacted. So we want to give an update on the Tobago's perspective. So at this time I will invite Mrs. Rolox Hackett, who would give an update on the education sector in Tobago.
Ladies and gentlemen, members of the media, good morning. The Division of Education, Innovation and Energy takes its responsibility to effectively administer the education system on the island very seriously. Given the current realities of the closure of schools until the 20th of April 2020 and the continued threat of the COVID-19 virus, we at the division have developed a three-pronged approach to guide our response. I will take you through briefly the three approaches and mainly focus on the second approach. Now, level 1 response basically looked at our preparedness for COVID-19, and it focused mainly on an education drive throughout all the schools, educating the students as to how they can protect themselves, their classmates, and their family members. As far as improved hygiene practices, and those have been made, referred to all the time. As far as increasing the frequency of sanitization practices at our various schools, we would have also engaged in that. That also meant that we had to also hold discussion with MTS and our other janitorial service providers at our various schools. We also engaged the principals, and we advised them to hold discussions with the members of their staff as to what plan of approach that they will pursue in the event that we had to close schools. Foreign field trips were cancelled, and we also sought at the Division of Education to procure additional sanitizing supplies, for example, to clean and to disinfect the schools. And I want to say at this point in time, we would have received those additional supplies, and they are currently being distributed at our various primary schools at this present time. So that's a level 1 response. So that was before schools were actually closed. So level 2 is where we are at right now, with the closure of all learning institutions in Trinidad and Tobago. And I really want to emphasize all, because at this point in time, we would have received some reports that in Tobago here, we have some early childhood centers that are still operational. So we want to say this morning, again, reinforce to all administrators, all principals, all schools are required to be closed at this time. This is not a time for us to try to gain the upper hand as we prepare for the high-stake tests like SCA and CSEC, etc. It's a health crisis that we have here at this time, and we need to act in obedience to the call to have all schools closed. At this point in time, all previous approvals that were granted for local field trips, all of those have been cancelled. We are also saying to our administrators and the stakeholders in education that the situation is very fluid, so we are asking all our administrators and stakeholders to stay tuned to our government and Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, DIE, and Division of Health and Wellness bulletins, so that they can be so guided as to the various approaches as time goes by. The continued delivery of the curriculum. It is expected that parents may be a bit apprehensive about the extended closure of schools and might be wondering what all this could mean for the continued progress of their children. The DIE and the THA are mindful of this, and as such, we are currently exploring and developing several mechanisms to ensure that students have continued access to educational opportunities during this time. Now, even while we are doing this, I would also like to remind parents that we are really 2 weeks and some days before the end of the school term. And as a result, most of the teaching in this term have already taken place. The students at all levels would typically at this time be doing their end of term tests, and because it is the second term in the academic year at the secondary level, many schools have a 60-40 ratio for marks, 60% course mark, and 40% examinations. Considering this, most of the projects have been submitted already, and most high schools have done their midterm examinations, so parents do not be overly worried at this time. The implementation of a school e-learning plan As I would have indicated under our level 1 response, principals were asked to contemplate a plan like this. So today I am therefore pleased to report that several of our schools at both the primary and secondary levels are utilizing various arms of technology and even social media to continue the teaching learning process and also to keep in touch with parents. In addition to what schools have in place, parents are advised that there are several other avenues on the internet that they can utilize. For example, the SCA students, parents can check edmundo.com. There is also SCA Result Live Lessons on IBM TV. And those persons who do not have that channel, they can also go on YouTube and access the assessment and the lessons. There's also, we have Pinnacle.com. At the secondary level, you have many schools have their own established systems where they have departmental blogs and web pages, etc. So we are asking parents to also check in on that. The Ministry of Education also has a school learning management platform, and we are encouraging parents to also go onto that site and log in. They will also find SCA specimen papers there, and there's also the capacity for the live streaming of classes. There are also other ways parents can engage their children during this time. Now, there is an opportunity for students to develop their word processing skills. As many of you may know, we are on the verge of implementing e-testing at the secondary level. And one of the challenges that we have experienced in planning for the implementation of e-testing is the fact that many of our students do not possess the necessary word processing skills that they require. Because to effectively do the examinations under e-testing conditions, speed and accuracy becomes very, very important. So this is an opportune time, I think, for the students who are at home to hone their skills in this particular area. And I'm saying that they can go online and they can Google online typing tutorials, and they can do the practice exercises that are contained therein. So you have, for example, speed typing online, and the famous Mavis Beacon, that is also online, and they can utilize that. And also I want to say to parents, additionally, it's an opportunity for parents, those who are at home with their children, to probably teach them some, life skills, whether it is sewing, gardening, carpentry, etc. Engage the students meaningfully during this period. Do not allow them to just, sleep late, but engage them meaningfully during this period. Additionally, the production of materials for e-learning. Already there's a national call from the desk of the Director of School Supervision for teachers who are willing to be videotaped or audio taped delivering lessons, which will be broadcast nationally, to come forward and indicate their interest. In Tobago, this initiative will be led by officers from the Curriculum Development Unit of the Division of Education, Innovation and Energy. It is also anticipated that the Teacher Professional Development Center at Hope would take center stage as a preferred venue here in Tobago to facilitate this process. Student support assistance. Now, continued monitoring and evaluation of the psychosocial and emotional health of our students remain paramount even at a time like this. As such, the Student Support Service Unit at the division will use its database to continue the support it offers to our high-risk students. This will be done electronically, obviously. Social workers, school psychologists, guidance counselors would be required to regularly check in on high-risk students for whom home may not be the safest place to be at this time. In the event that school reopens after this period, the guidelines outlined in Phase 1 will become relevant again. In addition, principals, school safety officers, and janitorial staff would be required to enter school compounds prior to the reopening date to ensure the necessary sanitization is done before students reoccupy their classroom. Permit me to end finally by speaking briefly on the high-stake examinations, SCA, CSEC, and CAPE. As we all know, the Prime Minister indicated yesterday that the SCA will be postponed until around May, and that's not final as yet. So that needs to be determined. So parents need to just keep abreast of the information and be so guided. As far as CSEC and CAPE, again, there's no definitive decision on those areas as yet, and so we all have to stay tuned. But as I would have indicated, there are several avenues whereby students can remain current and to continuously revise their work so that when the time comes and we have definitive dates, they will be prepared. So finally, to all students, I say remain safe, practice what you have been taught by your teachers, and especially read personal hygiene. And parents, I say to you, protect, monitor the activities of your children, keep them away from offices, and leave them only in safe places. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Rollox-Hackett. Some persons may say we're going a bit long, but we are really trying our best to inform persons as adequately as possible and to be as comprehensive as possible to ensure we don't miss anything, that persons understand how serious this thing is and how serious we have taken it and the length and the breadth that we have gone to ensure that we take all factors into consideration. Just to wrap up, we will revert to the medical side of things because at the end of the day, this is a respiratory illness that affects us all. So I invite Dr. Wheeler, who will just give us a wrap up with some advice, some medical advice.
Right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Just in overall advice in the interest of time, I just want to reinforce that this problem that we face is something that we do have a measure of control of if we do take preventative steps. Our general hand hygiene, regular washing of our hands, soap and water, hand sanitizers are only if you don't have access to soap and water. Hand sanitizers are not the first line treatment or first line in washing your hands. Soap and water is the first line treatment for keeping your hands clean and washing your hands. If you do have a cough or cold, use respiratory etiquette in the sense that cough in a tissue, throw the tissue away, wash your hands. If you have to cough and you don't have a tissue, cough in your elbow. And again, try to wash your hands. Social distancing, keeping at least 3 feet as far as possible from persons. And if you see someone exhibiting flu-like illness, keep your distance. Essentially, the hospital and the island, as far as the medical response, have been in a state of readiness for some time. The County Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Hoyt, and her team screens persons coming in from international flights, also cruise ships, which are no longer coming. The hospital has had experience with dealing with several suspected cases. We have the appropriate PPE, we have the designated isolation areas, we have regular training of staff in the use of PPE. This is ongoing. We do have adequate numbers of PPE at this point in time. With respect to persons who are tested, they are tested only if they exhibit symptoms. We have adequate swabs to test. The test at the moment can only be done at CAFA, which is the recognized laboratory in not just Trinidad and Tobago, but the region for testing COVID-19. So we have to send the samples there. We generally get results within 24 to 48 hours. If we do have someone who tests positive for COVID and they are well, we do have a facility where they can be isolated safely. If the person is ill and tests positive, we have the assurance from our health facilities in Trinidad that we'll transport the persons there. Now, the reason why that is, this is a national problem, and you've seen that in Trinidad they have identified 2 medical facilities to look after COVID-positive patients. This is mainly because you want your other facilities to be able to continue caring for your patients as far as possible. Tobago only has 1 medical facility to care for ill persons. So therefore, we want to have the capability to continue to care for patients who will have strokes, heart attack, and various other conditions. So that is why, unless we have another facility developed, in the interim, we will be transporting those positive patients who are ill and need hospitalization to Trinidad. I think I'll probably stop here, and any further questions we can deal with in the question and answer session. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much to Dr. Wheeler and to the entire team for presenting. So at this time, we will open up to some questions from members of the media. We ask that persons be respectful, and please, to whomever if you have a panelist, one of the panelists that you are directing your questions to, you just say so and they would respond accordingly. So the floor is now open.
Okay, Elizabeth Williams from TV6 and The Express. What I wanted to know to the health secretary, I know she said that 1 person came in from a flight to Tobago and that person is quarantined. Would you care to reveal where exactly this person is quarantined in Tobago?
Well, we're not releasing the location to the public. We intend to keep those in confidence, but to give you the assurance that the quarantine, the system is in place and it's working very effectively, and members of staff, doctors, etc., continue to monitor the situation along with the security forces.
Okay. What I wanted to know also is some doctors have indicated, I don't know if Dr. Wheeler will say, that they do not have enough of the relevant PPEs to treat with patients at this time.
Okay, we do have adequate stocks of PPE to treat the patients as necessary. What we are trying to avoid is everyone having a personal supply of PPE for themselves, because if that is the case, we will quickly exhaust what we have. So when the need arises for the use of PPE, there's adequate supply of all types of PPE for the personnel to use.
Okay. I don't know if you would care to, because TV6 would have spoken to TN Tech, who would have indicated that 1 person from Trinidad is quarantined in Trinidad, and the 7 employees from Tobago are also quarantined. Could you care to, or do you have any information as to this particular TN Tech official who is quarantined in Trinidad? If that person tested positive, is that person one of the new cases that the Ministry of Health would have revealed?
I don't have access to that information. I'm not sure if anyone else would like to answer that.
Well, let me say that I'm in constant discussion with the Minister of Health with a view to finding out whether any residents from Tobago have tested positive for COVID, and to date, up to this point, no one from Tobago has tested positive. If the situation changes, we will inform the public, of course, through the media.
Okay, just one other question, as I don't want to hog the mic. In terms of schools, to Ms. Sherry and Rolex Hackett, you did speak of sanitizing supplies. How many schools are you catering for? And do you have like the portable sanitizing equipment or machine, where students when students return to school, they will be able to use these portable supplies as we see at some places?
Okay, at this point in time, as far as the portable
some of those. We are catering for all levels, from the ECC to the secondary, also including the trade school and law school.
What is the total number of schools, are we saying? How many primary and how many secondary?
We have 42 primary schools that we have catered for, and 9 secondary schools, and 1 trade school that we have currently. But the supplies are currently being distributed to the primary schools, and when we are finished with the primary school, we're going to move on to the other schools.
And what about general health centers?
Health centers?
Like early childhood centers?
Oh, yes, we will also distribute to them. So right now we are distributing to primary school principals, and we move on to the early childhood, the primary, secondary, and the trade school.
To ensure that these schools are properly sanitized, will there be someone or an individual who will be going to inspect to ensure that these schools are properly sanitized?
Well, at the various schools we have janitorial staff, which are usually supervised by supervisors from the various companies. MTS will have their building supervisors resident at the various high schools, and they will be the ones who will check together with the safety officers at the various schools and also the principals to ensure that what is needed to be done, that we have those things in place so that when schools reopen, they will be able to take care of the sanitary needs of the children.
Thanks. Clayton?
Okay, good morning. Clayton Clark, Radio Tambrin. Ms. Hackett, you mentioned that supplies for schools. You mentioned primary schools. Anything of supplies for secondary schools?
Yes, secondary school. Now let me say this, with the secondary school, while we started with the primary, in that with the secondary school, a lot of the supplies usually come via MTS, given the contract that we have with MTS. But because this is unusual circumstance, the contract does not cover the quantity that we will need at this point in time, given the fact that we have to increase the frequency of the sanitization process.
All right, thank you. This question is for yesterday. The health minister announced, and I wanted there's a clarification that all treatments, all persons from Tobago will be transported to Trinidad. Persons who tested positive. So and I'm hearing that we have a center here. So I just want some clarification on that, please.
Yes. The intention is if a person is positive and gets ill, that they'll be transported to Trinidad. The arrangements we made provisions if someone is positive and well, that they can adequately be monitored in Tobago and only if they become ill. Now, this really is an accommodation for the Ministry of Health. Now, if the Ministry of Health has decided that they will take all the positive patients, then that's not a problem. But we have provisions in Tobago. In the event someone is positive and well, we have adequate isolation facilities that they can be monitored. And if they do become ill, then we can adequately deal with them. If necessary, they can be stabilized in the hospital while awaiting arrangements for transfer to Trinidad. And we can adequately keep them in the hospital for 24 to 48 hours. Yes. And as I was just reminded, the majority of the persons who are positive will be well. You would know that just about 80% will be well or have minimal symptoms. There's only 10 to 15% will develop symptoms and may need hospitalization. And the mortality from this is in the region of 3 or 4%.
This question is to Mr. Jack. Yesterday it was announced also that a couple of government ministers would be here to meet with the Chief Secretary and the Chamber of Commerce. Just give an update. He said it was like yesterday and early this morning. The Prime Minister made the announcement yesterday.
Yes, I'm in communication with Minister Paula Gopi-Schoon for us to make the arrangements and pin down a definite date for the meeting. But yes, the ministerial team of Mrs. Alison West, Minister in the Ministry of Finance, Senator Paula Gopi-Schoon, Minister of Trade, and the Tourism Minister, Mr. Randall Mitchell, will be meeting with Secretary Davidson and the Chief Secretary and a team from the Tobago House of Assembly as we continue to formulate policy initiatives to treat with COVID-19.
Annual meeting.
We will send out a notice and we will inform persons and we'll have a press conference. Tentatively, we're looking at before the end of the week, ideally Saturday or tomorrow. So as soon as I leave here, I will.
Okay, well, yesterday you mentioned they were coming either yesterday or this morning. So
yes.
I just wanted clarified.
No, well, at the time the PM mentioned it, as I liaised with the ministers, today was cabinet for the ministers. Tomorrow is both Parliament and Senate. So that is why they were unable to come at the moment. But the meeting will be held before the end of the week, and I've already alerted the stakeholders in the business community. I spoke to Ms. Dan Haddad last night, and president of the Tobago chapter of the Tobago Chamber of Industry and Commerce, and I'm in direct communication with the team from Trinidad. And when we have notice of the meeting, a press release will be sent out to members of the media, and we will convene a press conference thereafter.
All right, final question. In regards to the isolation center, are you all going to make it public, one? And two, is that center located at the Scarborough Hospital? Why I'm asking, we heard reports that somebody came to the hospital with flu-like symptoms and the whole accident and emergency persons were asked to go home. Some of us felt it was responsible not to run. That is a story, but there's a concern if it's at the hospital, how it's going to affect the operation of the particularly accident and emergency department.
Well, let me say before I hand it over to the medical practitioners that the current facility for quarantine is not at the hospital. It's a separate facility and somewhat isolated. I'm not so sure what would have transpired at the hospital, and maybe Dr. Wheeler can answer. Or Mrs. Mitchell.
Okay, certainly persons who have flu-like symptoms, we are directing to a separate area. At the moment, we are setting up an area outside of casualty where persons with flu-like illness can be managed. Now, I'm not certain of the specifics that you refer to, but the aim is not to have someone who's obviously averting showing symptoms of flu in the same space with other patients who don't have problems related to the flu. We do have adequate isolation spaces in casualty. So if someone is suspected of COVID, or remember, aside from COVID, this is our normal flu season, where we do have influenza patients that we also isolate in the same manner. So the accident and emergency department does have adequate space to keep persons separate from the rest of the patients in casualty, as well as we have identified spaces on other wards where persons can be kept separate from the rest of the patients.
Okay. I have another question with respect to the situation this morning with the Cabo Star. I don't know if you, Madam Health Secretary, if you can speak to this. With respect to the Cabo Star and one person exhibiting flu-like symptoms was taken off, but passengers were told they would have to remain on the Cabo Star for up to 8 hours. Have you been informed of this situation? Because we know that the Cabo Star would be transporting cargo, etc., to Tobago.
No, I don't have information on that particular situation, but of course, if there are any suspected cases, there are protocols established, and we would expect that, the particular situation be communicated to the team. So perhaps after this session, we can look to see what exactly would have transpired.
Good morning. Akin Labihula, Tobago Channel 5 News. I just have one question for the Secretary of Health. Secretary, we know that the government stated that no mass gatherings, but some essential services would have to stay open, such as supermarkets and markets. Now, public health officials would have brought up the situation, but in the market, it could get pretty crowded and chaotic at times, and there's a lot of bumping and touching of persons. Have you all considered putting in any measures to control how many people will go to the market at once, how many people are allowed into the facility at a time, or are you all setting aside a couple hours for the elderly or the vulnerable to go and get the goods and come back? Anything like that has been considered?
Yes. Yes, at our Executive Council meeting yesterday, we also discussed the preparation by the divisions, and the Secretary with responsibilities for agriculture and Mr. Hayden Spencer, he and his division are tasked with the responsibility of ensuring that we have a system in place at the market as well as at our beach facilities, those who may be accessing services to go over to the reefs, etc. Tobago Reef.
Corey? All right. Go ahead.
I'm Corey Connolly, News Day, Mrs. Davidson-Celestine. You are receiving a baptism of fire at a period of public pandemic. Do you foresee a challenge in dealing with the myriad of issues confronting the health sector and also addressing this issue, overwhelming issue?
Well, one of the good things is that we have very competent staff in the Division of Health, Wellness and Family Development. I have been meeting with various heads of different units. So far, I've met with the TRHA to get an understanding of what their challenges are, and I've also met with the COVID team as well as members residing within the walls of this building. I'm yet to go to the health centers, but given the challenge with COVID, we have been in preparation mode basically. Going forward, I expect to receive the support of all the members of staff. There are challenges, but I'm sure that with the team approach, it will help to alleviate those challenges within the shortest possible time frame. And on my left here is the Secretary of Finance and the Economy, who have already started talking with a view to ensuring that we have the necessary funding to deal with some of the challenges, because within the TRHA, the challenge is one of finances.
Whitfield Turner from Identifier, Secretary Davidson-Celestine, as you have the mic. I just wanted to go back to something you mentioned earlier. You mentioned 32 spaces. You made mention of the geriatric ward. So I just want to get it clarified. Is it that the geriatric ward would be used as an isolation facility now?
Yes, we have spaces at the geriatric facility. We also have at the old rehabilitation center, and we also have a mobile isolation facility that is with TEMA at this point. So in total, we have 32 spaces.
Okay. And still, as you have the mic, given, just to piggyback on the situation this morning with the Cabo Star, do you see it becoming necessary now to begin some form of screening, thermal or otherwise, for persons using the sea bridge as a precautionary measure?
It has become very necessary, and that one of our discussions last night, and as a matter of fact, right after the press conference, the COVID response team task force will be meeting for us to ensure that we deal with all those gaps that currently exist. But that has become very, very necessary.
Okay. Dr. Wheeler, you might be best seated to take this one. We have reports where persons, particularly senior citizens, would have recently returned from a cruise via Panama, and they apparently were supposed to have been under quarantine, but for some reason some of them apparently are not adhering to the quarantine measures. Are you aware of such, and can you shed any light on that matter?
Unfortunately, I'm not aware of such.
Okay.
All right, Whitfield, any other questions?
Yes, in Tobago. Yeah, according to the reports I got, some of them came back. They were part of a larger group, and they came back home to Tobago, and because they were out of the country, they passed through Panama. They passed through areas where they could have possibly picked up something. So the feeling was they should quarantine themselves for 14 days, but they have been up and about, in and out. So I just wanted to find out if that was something the authorities were aware of.
Well, we don't have that information within our system, but what I know, there was some cruise ship passengers who would have come into the country, and they are now at a quarantine facility in Trinidad. So is this a very recent occurrence?
This took place prior to the return of those in Trinidad. This would have happened over the weekend.
I don't have, we don't have that information. But one of the things we have agreed is that those who are coming in, whether it be through the international, whether it be through the ports in Trinidad, from international, and those who are coming through the airport here will be quarantined.
What about some persons? Oh, you? Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, Madam Secretary. If it is you have information with regard to these persons, my advice would be if you can turn over the names, and we'll get the public health surveillance to make contact with those individuals and ensure, in terms of the validity of the occurrence, whether they came in without public health being aware of it, so that we can do the necessaries in the public interest.
Okay. In terms of the testing, there are some who are of the belief that testing should be done in Tobago. That may not be possible at the moment, but going forward long term, I don't know if the policymakers see that as a viable investment that can be made going forward, that we can have a certified lab in Tobago to do testing for these and possibly other types of situations going forward.
All right, so prior to COVID-19, we had an early onset to the flu season here in Tobago. And one of the things we noticed, H1N1, H3N2, back in October, we had a number of persons flooding this system with regard to influenza. We had discussions with CARFA in terms of upgrading the lab at the Scarborough Hospital to be able to do virology. That should have come on stream come August. We will continue with the discussions in terms of upgrading the facility so that we can deal with viruses here on the island.
Okay, thank you very much. To the Deputy Chief, given the announcements made yesterday by the Minister of Finance, is it something that's up for consideration where we would see the Tobago House of Assembly dipping into its Heritage and Stabilization Fund to provide additional comfort or relief for persons in Tobago?
Assemblyman Jack, before you continue, just want to inform the members of the media, as the Secretary would have said, we have a COVID-19 meeting just after, so we're trying to wrap up. Secretary Jack.
All right, thank you for the question. We are looking at our resources, not just the contingencies fund, in terms of how we address the issues related to COVID-19. Some departments and divisions are sufficiently resourced to treat with the issues. Other divisions and other departments may require further assistance. But once we sit next week in Executive Council, while the draft note is being prepared, we will on Wednesday make the announcement as to the mitigating measures and the other measures that we would put in place for the persons and citizens, for Tobagonians and citizens resident on the island. So it's not just limited to the contingencies fund. Pardon? Right, and the committee as well, I'm appointed by the Executive Council, will meet. And of course, we anticipate that additional support will come from central government as we put in place the necessary measures to treat with this pandemic. So it's not just limited to the contingencies fund.
My final question for, well, basically all of you seated across from me. When it comes to Tobago, you are the special forces, as it were, in this battle against an invisible enemy. In terms of personal care, can you assure the Tobago populace that its elite forces are taking adequate care of themselves so that they can continue to lead this fight? Because I know in times like this, it's very easy to become overwhelmed, overworked. I know 400 has a lot of experience in this, but are you all taking the necessary time off to recharge your batteries so that you can be sharp and ready to continue to fight this battle?
Very interesting question with you.
Well, thank you for your concern.
Yes.
Well, thank you for your concern.
Yes.
You know, I think, I'm not sure about the other persons, but I've been traveling back and forth between Trinidad and Tobago at meetings to ensure that we have the available resources and to ensure that we inform government policy so that the Tobago economy and the remained resilient even in the face of this pandemic. So thank you for your concern. Hopefully I can request a couple hours rest later in the afternoon.
Liz, before you continue, members of the media, we just have, just to ensure everyone has an opportunity, we just have Cassandra to have the final questions after Liz, and then we will wrap. Continue.
Just two questions. One is respect to some employees at two major hotels in Tobago who would have been fired with immediate effect and no extra pay whatsoever. Have you received that information? That hotel is, well, those hotels are located in Tobago West, and received a letter that these employees would have received stating that they have to leave the compound.
No, I have not received that report, but if you could forward the information to me. But in my conversation with the hoteliers in Southwest, the situation is quite serious. They were down to 10% and declining, and they were receiving numerous cancellations from visitors. As we might all be aware that the primary source market for the Tobago tourism sector is Europe, UK, Scandinavia, and with the cancellation of those flights and with the limited inter-island travel by visitors and with the cancellation of the cruise season, that really highlights the problem. So we will be meeting with the hoteliers to discuss our measures, and we have our social services program under the Division of Health, and we'll make the formal announcements as to how we can assist those persons who are displaced. So, you know, we empathize and we appreciate the situation, and we're putting together all the mitigating measures to treat with especially the tourism sector in the first instance. And let me also commend the restaurants and the bars in Tobago. I know the Prime Minister was highlighting the fact that some persons were non-compliant with the measures outlined to treat with COVID-19 in terms of closing down of bars and restaurants. But I wanted to thank them publicly for their resilience and their innovation and the innovative measures that they have put in place. One restaurant is now implementing lunch and curbside pickup. I spoke to that restaurant and hotelier on Monday evening, and he has implemented that with a delivery system. Other bars, such as Barcode, they are also doing curbside pickup, and they are looking for ways to survive in this trying time. And I want to commend them and the rest of the Tobago community. We will get through this pandemic together. Let us all work together for the not just the survival, but the resilience of the Tobago economy and the Tobago business sector. And
my final question is, I know that you are in Trinidad with respect to giving the Tobago perspective, but as far as you are aware, the committees that the government would have established do you know if any Tobagonians are also on these committees?
Yes. Mr. Tommy Elias is also on the committee chaired by the Minister of Trade and Industry. And in terms of recommending Mr. Elias for the committee, he was recommended given his past position as Director of the Port Authority. And he has been liaising directly with his counterparts in the Tobago business community, getting their feedback and soliciting their views to inform government policy. Additionally, on the Education Committee chaired by the Minister of Education, comprising as well Minister of Sport and Youth Affairs, the Chief Secretary has also been appointed to that committee. So across the board, we continue to ensure that there is broad-based representation by the Tobago House of Assembly, and that Tobago's views and input that we inform the policy moving forward. So in addition to the Finance Committee, so we have representatives across the board, and I have been liaising with the Minister of Finance prior to the appointment of these committees. When we saw the decline in the oil and gas prices, we continue to have a very good working relationship, and we continue to have continuous dialogue. Similarly, the Minister of Trade and Industry. And I know that we are liaising directly with the PM on a number of issues. Tobago is not being left out at all, and this is a national issue, and let us continue to play our part, and we have the necessary support coming from the central government.
Cassandra, final questions?
Okay. Good morning. Cassandra Thompson, Forbes Guardian Media. My question, one Scarborough supermarket closed its doors this morning, indicating that they needed guidance from the authorities as to how they can protect their staff. Have you all held any meetings with these supermarkets or other agencies as to, we know that the information is out there, but they believe that they need some kind of special guidance as to how to protect their staff. Do you all have anything in train for them?
All right. We have been making the rounds. I know the Office of the CMOH has the health educators out, and even from within the TRHA, we have been doing sensitizations. I can speak for myself in terms of going to some of these businesses and some of these workspaces and informing persons with regard to preventative measures in terms of how you sanitize your work areas and workstations. I cannot tell you from this standpoint whether or not the CMOH office would have made contact with those supermarkets, but if we have a chat after in terms of this specific area, we can ensure that we include not only the supermarkets but the other essential areas to ensure they are covered in terms of sanitization and in terms of protection of staff. All right.
I just saw the message coming up on social media, and I also indicated to Councillor Tracy Davidson-Celestine, I'll be making contact with the owner right after the press conference, because we want to ensure that we all remain safe, and that supermarket with 2 branches, not just a major business in Tobago, but in terms of providing the necessary supplies and amenities to persons during this period.
Yes.
There is a concern. We are saying that persons who are sick would be transported to Trinidad. We are told on a Coast Guard vessel. Is there any consideration that persons who are that sick may not make it to Trinidad? What plans you all have in place for that?
Before Dr. Wheeler responds, what we are saying is that we have classed patients into 2 categories: those who are positive but well, and those who are positive but very ill, are critical. The statistic shows that we would only have 10 to 15% of those cases who will become very, very ill. For those who are positive but well, we will have them here in Tobago. And we have identified a number of different facilities within which we will hold those persons. We hope that we do not have any cases that we would have to send to Trinidad rather. But in the event that it does occur, which is about 15%, then we have made arrangement with the Coast Guard to have them sent to the respective facilities identified by the Ministry of Health. We will ensure that in transporting them to Trinidad that all the necessary systems are put in place so that they can be handled with the necessary care and attention.
We are also seeing in Trinidad ambulances properly outfitted, drivers and so forth. Is that being extended to persons working with the ambulances in Tobago?
Yes, the ambulances in Tobago are outfitted with appropriate PPEs, gloves, masks, gongs. What you might have seen on TV is a special transportation pods. We are seeking to also have that in Tobago in readiness in the event we do have to transport a patient.
Okay. There was also...
Last
I have
question, please. Yeah.
Two more, sorry. Very short.
Please.
There's also the concern, Davidson-Celestine, the issue of the pandemic leave in Tobago. Was that discussed in Tobago at the Executive Council level? Because since the announcement, persons trying to access it here were told that it has not been approved for the THE. So was that discussed at the last Executive Council?
While the pandemic leave was mentioned in the public, there are some arrangements that must still be worked out for public officers. And so those discussions are being had at this point in time, and we will inform the public through the press conference and maybe through press releases when that has been sorted.
And
but in Tobago at this time, we do not have a pandemic. We have no cases of COVID-19 in Tobago at this point in time, and we want to ensure that we keep it that way.
And my final question. Before we were being told if anybody is exhibiting symptoms or flu-like symptoms, they can contact their nearest health facility. Now we are being told that we have to contact the hotline. Is that the new protocol? So can we reinforce that, please?
Well, I would hand that question over to the medical practitioners.
Okay, we are in the process of setting up the hotline, but at the moment, in the interim, contact the health facilities as has been advised at the moment. As soon as the hotline is set up, we are sorting out the staff to cover the actual hotline. Once that is done, we will let the public know, but we are aiming to have that done by the end of the week.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
All right. I do thank the members of the media. I thank the public for having your patience with us as we update you on Tobago's response to the threat of COVID-19. As I want to appeal to the members of the media, we are working hand in hand, and we do appreciate the information that we share, that you share on our behalf. And we just want to really encourage you to work hand in hand with us. This situation affects us all, so it doesn't help us to hide any information from you. So I can assure you that we are not hiding any information. I can assure you as well that when or if or when we do have a positive case, which we are praying God forbid it doesn't happen here, that we will inform you. But also, if you have information, you can get in contact with us. If persons are not adhering to protocols and so on, that we may not have the information and you do, you can call any of us and we can work hand in hand. This is a situation that affects us all. So I thank you, members of the media. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to our cameramen, everyone who would have been a part of this. And we do we encourage you to have a wonderful day. Be safe and ensure to practice your preventative measures for this COVID-19. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
And that was live coverage of the Tobago House of Assembly's Post-Executive Council Media Briefing. We now return to our regular programming. Thanks for viewing TTT.
The winning numbers in the National Lottery online draws for Thursday, 19th March 2020 at 10:30 a.m. Playway, the number 36 Donkey, Mega and Mega Ultra Ball called. Pick 2, the numbers 12 and 33 in that order, Mega Ball called. Pick 4, the numbers 2, 5, 6 and 6 in that order.